Well, let's take you live to the cricket conclave now, where sports consultant Boria Majumdar is chairing a session with cricketers from Australia, Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting and Allan Border.
Did he tell Herschel Gibbs that he actually dropped that World Cup? Perhaps for me, that is the best ever innings in the history of World Cup cricket. 120 not out against South Africa in that game. And then what happened with Allan Border when something, must have exploded in his mind. And then finally, in 2003 and 2007, the competitions that Ricky won. I've not seen a team dominate a World Cup like Ricky's team did in 2007. So this is a story of an evolution. I'll start with Allan. Allan, when you're in the middle of a competition, a World Cup final, England going all great guns, Mike Gatting plays the reverse sweep. Tell us about what happened.
Well, it was a great venue, being in Eden Gardens. We had fantastic support from the Indian crowd. I think most of the crowd were supporting us. So we had the crowd on our side, but England were playing very well at that particular point of time. Mike Gatting had come to the crease and started to play a very good innings. I think he made 50-odd in that particular game. And he'd taken to our spinner, which was Tim May. He'd started to hit a few big shots off Tim May, and he was playing very, very well. And I can't remember who prompted me. Probably this bloke here, Stephen, said, "AB, why don't you have a bowl or change things up a little bit?" And of course, I was always looking around for other options. I didn't rate my bowling very highly, so I relented and decided to have a bowl myself. And it was a critical time in that particular game, so it was a bit of a risk, but a gamble worth taking, I suppose. So I set a field accordingly. I had a very strong onside field, and the offside was pretty much inside the circle. And I knew I wanted to bowl it very tight into Mike Gatting. He was a very strong offside player, so I wanted to bowl it in tight, maybe alongside his pads, that sort of line. And of course, being my first ball, I was a bit stiff, and I bowled it way wide outside leg stump. And of course, Michael had decided that he was going to play the reverse sweep. So he had to sort of reach a long way outside his leg stump to go fetch the ball. And Chris caught the top edge onto his shoulder and straight up in the air, and he was out. So it was a crucial point. I feel sorry for Michael because he cops a fair bit of stick from everywhere in England where he goes. I mean, there's a few things he cops a bit of stick about, but that particular reverse sweep shot, that was just one of those crucial moments of that game.
While he got stick, perhaps that's the most famous reverse sweep in cricketing history. None of us would talk about it if he didn't get out and you didn't win. Steve, did you actually tell Herschel Gibbs that he dropped the World Cup?
Look, speaking of Herschel Gibbs, I had a Herschel Gibbs moment in that '87 World Cup, and I don't know whether Alan remembers it, but I was very keen for Mike Gatting to get out because a number of overs before that, Tim May bowled a nice looping off spinner. Mike Gatting went down the wicket and went to hit it over wide mid-on. I was on the fence at deep long on. Took a really great catch, looked down, and I realised the rope was between my legs. So it was signalled six. You probably forgot that, AB. I think it cost Australia the World Cup. So I had my Herschel Gibbs moment back in '87. Thankfully, Alan got that wicket, and we got away with it, and everyone forgot about it. But, look, I didn't exactly say that to Herschel, but you don't want to ruin a good story. So it was something pretty close to that. It was one of those instances where when Herschel went out to bat, we were sort of in his ear a bit, giving a bit of advice when he batted. He played a fantastic innings in that game. He got 100. They ended up getting 270, and we had to obviously win that game to get through the semi-final. I came out at 3 for 49. I think was I batting with you to start with, punter? And we sort of worked our way back into the game. Then it came to that crucial moment where I clipped that ball to mid-wicket. Herschel caught it for a split second, went to celebrate too early, and slipped out of his grasp. And probably the biggest mistake he made was walking across from mid-wicket to mid-wicket on the other side and going directly past myself and Michael Bevan at the time. So I thought, good opportunity. I might just have a couple of words to Herschel on the way through. But that's cricket. I mean, we had a bit of a chat all the way through the whole day, a bit of banter, a bit of fun. I mean, unfortunately, the same for Mike Gatting. He'll probably be remembered for that one instance for his whole career. And he was a fantastic player, Herschel. So in some ways, like Gat, I feel a bit sorry for him that he probably gets asked that question a lot.
Before I come to Ricky, I mean, just fast-forwarding to that next match, the semi-final. 9 runs last over, best batsman in that World Cup, Lance Klusener, first 2 balls, boundary. tie, what do you do then? I mean, as a captain, as a team, what do you do? I mean, you've almost lost the competition.
As a captain, you panic. What am I going to do now? You look around for some advice and no one's forthcoming, so you pretend to stay nice and cool and calm. I think every cricketer, every captain realises that the camera's on you, so you've got to pretend you're nice and relaxed and calm about the situation. The truth is, you're probably as nervous as anyone. I went up to Damien Fleming and I sort of said, "What do you reckon?" And he said, "What do you reckon?" I said, "I don't really know." We came up with the end conclusion, let's try and bowl a Yorker. Damien didn't execute that very well because it was a half volley about 2 foot wide of off stump. I think in that situation, everyone was in such an intense pressure that it was a matter of, I think every player on the field was pretty much choking. The big mistake that South Africa made was they had 3 balls left. They should have had communication before that ball and decided, look, let me try and hit 4s off the next 2 balls. If we can't, we'll run no matter what in the last ball. Instead, they didn't communicate. It was a miss hit and they didn't know what to do, and they both ended up at the same end of the crease. So really, from their point of view, it was a lack of communication. For us, we probably got out of jail because it was, we had opportunities to win that game before those last overs. We had missed run-outs, we had missed catches. So it wasn't a matter of South Africa choking. They just failed at the crucial moment.
The one person who perhaps will also remember, you said, about your catch, Darren Lehmann missed that run out. I mean, had Lance Klusener got that run, one would have imagined what would have happened to Darren Lehmann.
That's exactly right. I mean, he missed a run out from about 2 feet away.
Correct.
And we all sort of threw our heads back and thought, that's our last chance, because I think Paul Rifle had dropped 2 catches and he was one of the safest pair of hands in our team. And I just thought, geez, we've had our opportunities. We really have blown it. And Klusener, as everyone knew, didn't miss hit a ball for the whole tournament. His batting was phenomenal. And he was really the forerunner for how you're playing one-day cricket. Opening up the front leg and giving himself room to hit through the offside. And he was unbelievable that whole tournament. So for him to suddenly miss it 1 ball at the crucial time, there was an element of luck for us getting through to that final.
Ricky, 2003 winning all the games, 2007 decimating the opposition. I remember you saying in the press conference at the end of the tournament that the way we've dominated the competition. Sort of, can you recount that? I mean, that kind of dominance over a sport by one particular cricket team, I don't think the world has ever seen.
Yeah, and it probably just it wasn't just 2003 and 2007 either. If you look at the last part of our 99 campaign, it was a bit the same. We'd lost early games in the tournament and we got ourselves in a position where we just had to win every game to keep progressing through the stages. And Stephen's innings at Headingley and then the semi-final. It was just, I guess that we had similar players through 99 into 2003 and even into 2007, and certain experienced players that came up in one of the chats earlier. Arjuna was saying earlier the amount of experienced players they had going into the World Cup was a real pivotal sort of moment for their team, and it was the same with us. We just had guys that had been through some really pressurised situations and luckily had come out on the winning side of that. And, the carryover from 99 to 2003, albeit with a slightly different team, and having Shane Warne not bowl a ball in the whole of the 2003 World Cup and Jason Gillespie go down after 1 game in the 2003 World Cup, we sort of thought that the wheels might start to fall off, what looked like being a really good 2003 World Cup for us. But to the players' credit, I've always felt that with any World Cup winning team that I was a part of anyway, or any great team that I was a part of, we had, Australia anyway, had a really good mix of youth and experience. And it was when the big games came around and the pressure moments came around, it was always the experienced guys that you turned to get you through those moments. And, Stephen did it in 99 along with Warney in the semi-final. And I guess when 2003 came around, I found myself as being one of the experienced players. And through the tournament, and luckily in the final, I was able to play quite well and probably play as well as I've ever played in the 2003 World Cup final and got us across the line. But if we as Australians are very proud of the way that we've been able to play in big tournaments like World Cups, and to go 2.5 or nearly 3 entire World Cups without losing a single game is I think says a lot about our upbringing, as Allan spoke about earlier, about we don't play a lot of games in Australia, so every game that you play is always under pressure, and you have to make sure that you're switched on and prepared and ready to do the best that you can for your team in any given moment of any of those contests. And that's the way that we approached our World Cup cricket as well.
You know, the 2007 campaign actually sort of, the build-up wasn't the great. You all had lost the Chappell Hadley Trophy, lost to New Zealand. You weren't a part of that. Michael Hussey captained the team, but the build-up wasn't that great. But that's not the question I want to ask. Talk about the final innings. I mean, that 140 against India, just like Steve's 120, will forever be in the annals of cricket history one of the greatest knocks. Talk about that innings, because I was having a chat with Sachin and he says, post 50, every run was valued at 2 or 3.
Yeah, well, as I said, as a leader, as an experienced player and one of the leaders of the team, you want to stand up in big moments. And you know, I was really lucky that day that we got off to such a great start. You know, we'd probably sensed a few nerves around the Indian team in the first 10 overs that they bowled that day. Saurav won the toss and probably rightly so, bowled on a wicket that just did have a little bit of moisture in it. The ball did swing a little bit early on, but Gilchrist and Hayden just got us off to an absolutely flying start. So when I went out to bat, you know, the score was already at about 90, and I had time then to sort of play myself in. You know, I think I got to 50 off probably 70 balls or something like that. But I remember very vividly when the second drinks breaks at the 35 over mark, we were still, I think, only 2 wickets down at that stage. And I said to the 12th man, right, it's time for me to go now. I'm just going to go as hard as I can and try and hit some boundaries and take the spinners on. And thankfully, that's the way it panned out. You know, ended up being not out at the end of the innings and shared quite a remarkable partnership with Damien Martin, who'd played in that World Cup final with a really badly shattered finger. He'd broken his finger the game before, and he ended up, I think, 88 or 89 not out in that game, and you wouldn't have even thought that there was anything wrong with his finger. So, yeah, look, it was nice to be able to stand up when your team needed it the most and on the biggest stage. And that.
Do you think Mahendra Singh Dhoni has the attitude to play Test match cricket and win overseas? Ricky, Steve, Alan, all of you? Ricky, start.
Look, I don't know, because I don't know Mahendra Singh Dhoni very well at all, but he seems to be a very good leader of the Indian cricket team. You look at the other formats of the game, he's led the team exceptionally well, so I don't think it can wholly and solely be pointed at Dhoni and his leadership around a Test match team. I think, you know, the reason that the game is called Test cricket is it tests every aspect of your game out, and if there's one little weakness in your character or your technique over 5 days of a Test match in any conditions, it's going to be exploited, and I think that's probably where India come undone every now and then. Everyone knows that they can play 2, 3 or 4 days of good test match cricket, but can they play, you know, the 5 hard days of Test match cricket that's needed on foreign soil to win Test matches away? So that's their big challenge, I think. The other thing that I think is going to be a challenge when they travel is that, especially when they go to Australia, is that finger spinners in Australia don't normally have a lot of success. You can look back through the record books and look at the last finger spinner that had a lot of success in Australia. There's not many that have done it, and we know how reliant Indian are on their finger spinners. So that could be another challenge for them in Australia as well.
I'll just explain the question a little more and ask you, Steve. When Dhoni takes the field in one-day cricket in that blue jersey, we all think he's the best. I mean, by far, if not the best, along with Saurav. It's a different Dhoni. 2020 cricket, the same thing. But Test match cricket, something happens to this Indian team after that Lord's victory, the way we crumbled, wasn't the most pleasing sight. Do you think in Test match cricket, Mahendra Singh Dhoni has the ability to do well down under?
You're right. I mean, I was at Lord's and saw that victory of India, and they played superbly well. And it was, I thought, a landmark, historic victory, which would propel them to a fantastic series. But they fell apart very quickly and disintegrated in the last 3 tests. So that has obviously got to do. Leadership has got to put the hand up for that in a lot of ways. That they didn't sort of correct that or turn it around. They just seemed to fall apart. And the last test was basically, it was a non-event, and that's happened pretty regularly for the Indian Test side in a lot of series, which has got to be concerning. So I think there is a question mark over Dhoni's leadership in Test cricket. But having said that, he's under so much pressure, enormous pressure constantly. He's playing a lot of cricket. He seems to be always playing some form of the game. He's had that Midas touch in the past. I mean, he performs in big matches, not only as a captain, but as a batsman and a keeper. But Test matches, it just seems like he's a little bit jaded and worn out from probably a decade of constant pressure and constant playing. So I think there is a question mark over his captaincy in Test match cricket. He's a fantastic player, but maybe it's time to sort of let someone else take up their mantle, like Virat Kohli or whatever. So I think they're looking for a bit of an injection of enthusiasm and fresh ideas. So Dhoni will probably be the captain in Australia, but I don't think it would be such a bad thing if he wasn't.
To take off from that last statement of his, you know, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, obviously, I mean, 2007 winning 8 Champions Trophy, World Cup, he's done incredible amounts for Indian cricket. But if you were Dhoni, and you were about to defend the world title, would you have not played the Test series as captain?
Oh, I think he's keen to play. MS Dhoni, I mean, he seems to like a very strong character to me. And what I have noticed with his 2020 cricket and 50-over cricket, he's always looking to be proactive. And that comes out in his captaincy and leadership. I think sometimes in Test cricket, he lets the game drift a bit too much. And that would be the only thing that I would notice about. He needs to be a little bit more proactive as the leader. But he can't take the whole lot responsibility on himself. I mean, the senior players have got to stand up a little bit and go give some support in Test match cricket. One-day cricket, 20-20 cricket, the game flows pretty quickly. Test match cricket, you've got to have your senior players helping out a little bit as well. So, look, I think it's not a bad thing for India to be in Australia playing Test cricket, hard cricket, for a couple of months before the World Cup. You know, that should give them a good indicator about where they're at as far as going into the 50-over game, which finishes